In most cities of ancient Greece, fear was something you felt. In Sparta, fear was something you were trained to rule. Sparta was not built to be normal. It was engineered as a living military machine in the south of Greece, in Laconia, where an elite minority of full citizens, the Spartiates, lived almost entirely for war. Their survival depended on it. They ruled over a much larger population of helots, an unfree class that outnumbered them and had every reason to rebel. Control, discipline, and unity were not ideals. They were conditions for existence. From birth, a Spartan male was not treated as an individual dreamer, but as future armor in the city's shield wall. According to later sources, newborns were inspected, and the weak or deformed could be rejected. Childhood affection existed, but it lived under a harsher truth. Sparta does not need everyone. It needs the few who can stand when everyone else breaks. At age 7, the real work began. Boys were removed from their families and thrown into the agoge, Sparta's state-run training system. This is where the so-called lost secret truly lives, not in a single quote or ritual, but in an entire structure designed to shape how a human being responds to fear. They learn to fight, wrestle, run, steal, and endure. They slept on reeds, went barefoot, wore a single cloak through cold and heat, and were deliberately underfed. Hunger, pain, humiliation, and beatings were not accidents. They were lessons. The message was clear. Discomfort is nothing. Your feelings are nothing. What matters is discipline, obedience, and the line holding. But here's the crucial point. Spartan training did not erase fear like magic. It did something colder and more effective. It made fear normal. If your whole life has been cold, hungry, uncertain, and filled with constant tests, then the chaos of battle is not a shocking exception. It is just the next step on a path you already know. What terrifies other men is, for the Spartan, a familiar climate. By their late teens, these youths had been conditioned to see their identity as completely fused with Sparta itself. Loyalty to the city, to the laws, and to their unit came before comfort, individuality, or even life. The enemy was not just the Persian, the Athenian, or the Helot. The enemy was shame. The enemy was letting the line collapse. So when we talk about a Spartan secret to overcoming fear, we are not talking about a slogan whispered before battle. We are talking about a society that, from childhood, rewired the relationship between the warrior and fear itself. By adulthood, the Spartan warrior did not walk into battle alone. He walked in as part of a phalanx. The phalanx was the physical expression of the Spartan idea of fear. You are not permitted to face fear as an isolated individual. Your courage is welded to the man next to you. Each hoplite's shield protected not just himself, but the man on his left. Break formation out of fear. Drop your shield. Run, and you don't just save yourself. You expose your brothers. That is why Spartan mothers are famously quoted as saying, "Return with your shield or on it," not because the shield was a poetic accessory, but because it was the symbol of your place in the wall. Lose it, and you endanger everyone. Fear was controlled through responsibility to the group. The worst outcome was not death, it was dishonor, surviving in shame, having abandoned your post. In a culture where your entire identity, status, and memory depended on holding the line, running became more terrifying than the spear facing you. Fear was narrowed down by repetition and rehearsal. Spartans drilled relentlessly, marching in step, maneuvering as a unit, learning to advance in armor, and keeping formation under pressure. Training was not about getting pumped. It was about building automatic responses so that when fear hit, the body already knew what to do. There were songs, war music, sacrifices to the gods, polishing of armor, and synchronized movements before contact with the enemy. These rituals were not superstition alone. They were psychological tools, a switch from everyday life into war mode, giving structure to the moment where other armies would feel only chaos. Fear was reframed, not denied. The Spartans did not preach that a real warrior feels nothing. In fact, their own stories reveal how seriously they took the possibility of cowardice. That obsession existed because fear was real. But their code taught this. A brave man is not the one who never trembles. He is the one who, having trembled, does what the law, the formation, and his duty require. In battle, this produced something foreign to many of their enemies. Where other soldiers might break once the first ranks fell, the Spartan phalanx was built to absorb the shock. The men behind pushed forward, adding weight, pressure, and inevitability. To hold your place in that crushing wall required not a momentary rush of emotion, but a long-forged habit of obedience and endurance. Their armor and tactics supported this mindset. Heavy shields, spears, and disciplined ranks were all designed so that survival depended on collective resolve, not isolated heroics. The structure itself punished panic. At the center of it all was an uncompromising honor system. To turn your back in battle or throw away your shield was to mark yourself, your family, and your lineage. The city remembered. Spartan law and custom made sure fear had a higher cost if it conquered you than if you died fighting. This is the lost secret once you strip away the Hollywood glow. Not mystical fearlessness, but a cold, methodical alignment of training, tactics, and honor, so that when fear appears, every choice, every habit, and every eye on you pushes you to stand fast rather than run. If you want to understand how seriously the Spartans took fear, do not only look at their heroes, look at the man they called a coward. His name was Aristodemus. He marched with King Leonidas and the famous 300 Spartans to Thermopylae in 480 BCE, the narrow pass where a tiny Greek force faced the invading Persian army. Shortly before the final stand, Aristodemus and another Spartan, Eurytus, were struck with an eye disease. Leonidas ordered them to leave. Eurytus, half blind, turned back into battle and died. Aristodemus did not. He survived and returned to Sparta. According to Herodotus, that survival was treated not as fortune, but as disgrace. No one would speak to him. No one would share fire with him. He was branded Aristodemus the coward. In a modern context, that reaction feels brutal, unfair, and cruel. But inside the Spartan code, it was entirely consistent. For Sparta, fear was not a private emotion. It was a public threat. If one man could step aside while another, equally wounded, chose death at his post, then the chain of obligation was broken. The story of Aristodemus was used as a warning. In the architecture of Spartan courage, there was almost no room for explaining, justifying, or negotiating. But the story does not end there. A year later, at the Battle of Plataea, Aristodemus fought with such ferocity that he was killed in combat. Some accounts suggest he was seen as trying too hard to erase his shame, fighting with reckless abandon that Spartans did not entirely admire, because ideal courage meant holding, enduring, and fighting to win, not simply throwing your life away. Even in redemption, the code was precise. Aristodemus' story reveals three hard truths about the Spartan secret. First, their system accepted that fear could break even the best trained men. The existence of a coward showed they did not believe in perfect conditioning. Fear was an enemy you had to guard against constantly. Second, the real target of their discipline was not just battlefield terror, but the fear of social death, humiliation, dishonor, and isolation. That penalty was so severe that, for many Spartans, a spear in the chest was preferable. Third, true Spartan courage was not mindless suicide. It was to stand in formation, to endure, to fight effectively, while still wishing to live. A warrior who rushed out alone, purely from shame, failed the ideal in a different way, because he abandoned the disciplined unity that made Spartan arms so feared. So, what is the lost Spartan secret to overcoming fear? It is not that Spartans felt nothing. It is that they built an entire world where hardship was routine, so danger felt familiar. Identity was fused to the phalanx, so abandoning your brothers was worse than death. Honor codes, songs, stories, and laws all sharpened one message. Fear is real, but yielding to it will cost you everything you are. This is why, centuries later, when we picture a Spartan at Thermopylae, we imagine not a man without fear, but a man who has been shaped so that, standing in that narrow pass, shield locked, he believes there is only one acceptable direction to move: forward.